Good evening, everyone. It's the Critical Drinker here. If you guys could do me a little favor, anyone on chat, just let me know if you can hear me. All right, looks like it's working then. Cool. Well, thank you very much for tuning in this evening. I've got myself and I've got Bowlestrek on that I'm going to be chatting with tonight. I just want to let you guys know there seems to be a slight delay when we're speaking, so you may hear the occasional couple of seconds pause when I say something before Bowlestrek responds, or vice versa. I apologize about that, but there's not really much I can do. So. Bowlestrek, do you want to just say hello to everyone? Let them know that you're online.
Okay, as far as I know, I am online. Hello, everyone. I'm sure some of you know who I am. Some of you probably don't. But I make angry videos ranting about things, and I have a talking goat that triggers people. And that's my story. And I've been doing this forever.
Nice one, man. Thank you very much. So the purpose of this live stream tonight, we're going to keep it pretty laid back. I don't have a set agenda for this tonight, but there's certainly loads of exciting things going on in the world of entertainment. It's a wonderful world of diversity and opportunities, and I think it's a great thing to be able to talk about it. I know, Bowlestrek, you've certainly been excited about things like Star Trek Discovery and Doctor Who. They've started lots of important conversations for all of us, and yeah, it's great to have you on tonight to be able to share your enthusiasm for those great shows.
Oh, thanks, man. And yeah, I don't think it's the discussions that they had hoped we would have, but we're having a great time with the discussions, to put it mildly.
It makes great subject matter for videos, put it that way. I've have to be honest, I stopped watching Doctor Who around the David Tennant, Matt Smith sort of era. I never really got into the Peter Capaldi version, and then when I found out that it had gone fully woke, I just tuned right out of it because for me it just wasn't worth the effort. I guess you toughed it out, so hats off to you for doing that. I don't think I could have got through those episodes. I have to ask, do you have a favorite one?
Do I have a favorite Doctor or favorite episode? Well, my favorite episode is probably The Deadly Assassin from the classic series. In terms of New Who, probably Blink. In terms of who is my favorite Doctor, this is a little unorthodox, but it's actually Colin Baker, largely based off his Big Finish performance, more so than the series. My favorite New Who Doctor is actually Peter Capaldi. Oddly enough, well, his first season, he gave us the interpretation of the Doctor that we had wanted since the classic series went away. And then with Series 9, it went completely off the rails. The show went to hell, started to get woke. And then it became a complete laughingstock when Whittaker started her reign of disaster last fall. But yeah, so Capaldi was the Doctor we had all wanted for a season. Then it just went to hell. I get to meet Capaldi in Toronto in a few weeks, so I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, he's my favorite New Who Doctor.
Yeah, he's from what I've seen the clips of him, he does seem to embody that kind of. He's got that sort of manic energy of the Doctor, but he's a little bit older, but he's quirky and he's got a bit of gravitas about him when he needs to, from what I've seen. So yeah, I can see why you would, why you'd like him.
The problem was he was playing a different character for each of the three series. Series 8 was the Doctor we'd wanted. Then we got something completely different in 9 and 10, which I don't place the blame on him. I place it more on Stephen Moffat. But the BBC played a big role in this as well. They went woke around 2013, and then by 2017, it got completely out of hand. So the ideology took precedence, and the shame with Capaldi is, even though there was an official story, anybody who looks into it can tell he was forced off the show so they could cast the female Doctor and turn it into the absolute catastrophe that it is right now. And yeah, and to anybody, I wouldn't recommend watching the episodes. They're awful. Uh, just watch YouTubers, me, Nerdrotic, MechRandom42, all those that have covered it. Just watch our videos. It's all you need to know. It's absolutely catastrophic. And probably the wokest thing I've ever seen, although woke Batman might surpass that. But yeah, it's awful.
Yeah, I think yeah, Batwoman is going to be something special indeed. I mean, I honestly don't know if I could bring myself to watch it. Um, I don't mind watching a woke movie so that I can review it, but the idea of giving up like 10 hours of my life to watch a show that I know I'm going to hate is a lot. Like even for me.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm gonna be watching. I just call her woke Batman. But no,
Yeah.
I'm going to be watching and reviewing the whole show. I don't know, my Batman movies, well, my woke Batman videos have actually done quite well. So I think Nerdrotic is doing the same thing. So yeah, we're going to be reviewing every episode as they come out because honestly, just judging by the trailers, this is so over the top with wokeness. It's past the point of being so bad it's good. It's so bad. It's absolutely it's absurd. So yeah, I'm gonna have fun with this one.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when I was reading up about it to kind of do my own video about the trailer and stuff, the amount of like social justice talking points that they managed to cram in, even to that small snippet of the show that you get, it's just unbelievable. Like you say, it kind of crosses that threshold, and it's almost like just a parody of what you imagine a social justice show would be. And I just don't know how anyone involved can take it seriously, you know?
I've almost been under the impression that they might be doing this on purpose, where they're going so over the top that SJWs will take it seriously. But I think they're actually banking on the outrage, and people are going to watch this crap just because they don't believe what they're seeing on screen. So if that's, and I think partially that might be what they're doing. So yeah, you have to admit it is a brilliant marketing strategy, but it's, well, if you look at right now, everything's gone woke. Every major franchise that we knew and loved growing up, it's all gone to hell. But it's so far over the top
Yeah.
at this point that you can't help but laugh and make fun of it.
Yeah, and that's the best way to do it. Like, I guess that's why I have fun with my channel, because rather than getting angry about shows like this, I can just make fun of them, and it makes for good videos. I enjoy making them. Yeah, by my last count, we've lost Star Trek, we've lost Star Wars, we've lost Doctor Who, and we're pretty much losing Marvel now to the wokeness. So it's all encompassing. I mean, it's impressive how quickly it spread, if nothing else.
Well, I think one thing that's really funny is there are two franchises coming back that have gone completely woke that nobody cares about, which failed decades ago, which would be Charlie's Angels and the Terminator franchise. Like nobody cared about nobody asked for these movies in the first place. So it's just the cluelessness that's going
I'll
on
add
here.
that to the list.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, I know you've actually, yeah, you've done videos on both of them. I've actually done quite well with my androgynous 1000 videos. Charlie's Angels, I didn't even bother making a video on it because it just looks so ridiculous. You got Men in Black, which has also gone to hell.
Yeah, good point. Actually, I never got around to watching Men in Black International, mainly because I really hate the actress in it, Tessa Thompson. I've said this in one of my other videos. I don't know what it is about her, but she always seems to have this weird smirk on her face, like she's really pleased with herself, no matter what's going on, and it just becomes so distracting. I mean, she pretty much made Westworld almost unwatchable for me. Like every
Yeah.
scene that she was in. Um, I was having to like grit my teeth just to get through it. I don't know why she does it and why she thinks it's a good idea. Just
It's
has anyone else in the chat noticed that, or is it just me?
Oh no, I've noticed it. She comes from the Brie Larson school of smugness. But when you look at these people, they are so full of themselves. And it's almost like Hollywood at this point doesn't care about making a profit. That comes secondary because outside of Captain Marvel, everything is tanking. So
Yeah.
it's they're so far up their asses with smugness and their own sense of superiority that that's what this is about. It's about pushing the agenda and everything else be damned. And oh crap, I just noticed Undoomed is in your chat. Hey man, I've been watching your videos for years.
Oh, nice one. Yeah, like going back to what you were saying there. I've genuinely thought this through myself about like where has this come from over the past, 5, 6, 7 years? Like why is this attitude shifted amongst Hollywood? And I don't know if it's a desire to stay relevant. I mean, a lot of the people who I see pushing this stuff the most are like actors and actresses who are kind of at the tail end of their careers, and they're looking for some way to become relevant again. When I think about someone like Alyssa Milano,
Oh
who's a
God.
huge like advocate of all this stuff. Yeah, like if it wasn't for this, she's like in her mid-40s now. No one would give a shit about her. She'd be gone.
Oh no.
But she's doing this, and she's doing the Women's March, and somehow that keeps her relevant. And it's I don't know if it's that just constant popularity contest that they want to go through.
Well, I think there is something, especially with it's just pragmatism. It is the way it is. Um, Women typically in terms of Hollywood, they'll peak up until about the age of 35. And it's, it is what it is. You'll have a few that will go beyond that. But I think a lot of it is just panic. Okay, I'm not relevant anymore. Nobody wants to come see my movie. So that's when the activism comes out. And it's hysterical. And then you'll have somebody like Natalie Portman, who hasn't been relevant in years. I think her last movies, I think the highest was like $3 million at the box office. Suddenly they're going to push
Well,
this.
she had yeah, I mean, she had Annihilation, which did do about 40 million, because I had to compile a little list of her last 5 or 6 movies, but
Okay.
it had like a $50 million budget, so ultimately it lost money. But yeah, I get what you're saying. Like everything apart from that, it was doing like 1, 2, 3 million at most. And she's 38 now, I think 39. So she's right on the cusp of that. Like you're saying, she's becoming irrelevant. So I suppose it worked out nicely for her that she got to come back as Thor 2.0.
Well, even if they were going to do a female Thor, which I think is ridiculous because we saw how well it went over in the comic books, I'm like, couldn't you at least find somebody that has some kind of gravitas that we could actually buy as a superhero? Whereas Padme Amidala is not a
Yeah.
superhero.
No. There is actresses out there that you could cast who are big and statuesque and who could kind of hold their own in that sort of character. But Natalie Portman, like as far as I understand, she is tiny. She's like 5'3" and
I don't know. I
weighs
think
like
she's like
110
5'1".
pounds soaking wet. Like could well be, yeah. Whatever she might be, like not the kind of person that can be playing a superhero like that. And it's just a strange decision, to especially like the way they've kind of dealt with Thor in Endgame, how they took this character who had gone through a great journey and finally was maturing into the kind of leader he needed to be, and then just made him this kind of drunken fat guy. It was a bit weird and unnecessary. I think they could have done a more intelligent character arc for him. But now they're taking even his name away from him. He's not even going to have that. So I'd love to know what Chris Hemsworth thinks of all this.
I have a theory as to why they've gone that way with Thor. Because if we look at the MCU, you've got the three male characters that started Captain America, Thor, and Iron Man. The other two are gone. Chris Hemsworth is staying on, at least for Thor Love and Thunder, and I believe he's also supposed to be in Guardians of the Galaxy 3. So my theory, now this could be wrong, but my theory is because he is staying and because the MCU is turning into a complete woke disaster, I think he's being positioned as a white male character to make fun of. And I honestly think that's why they went in the direction they did in Endgame. Now, again, I could be wrong, but given the way that they are headed, I tend to think that makes sense.
I don't think you're too far wrong there. I hope you are wrong, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's what they decide to do with him. And it's a shame because it's like they tried to position him as a character who needs to be brought down. But Thor hasn't needed to be brought down since his first movie. You know, that was his journey. He was too arrogant back then, and he needed to learn a bit of humility. So he got turned into a human, essentially. But now, with everything he's been through, he's matured and he's become his own man. And the idea that now he's going to just become a figure of fun to be replaced by a more worthy female character is really sad and such a disservice to Thor and the actor who's playing him, really, who's built up this character over several movies.
Well, I think they're doing a disservice to anyone prior to, well, the Great Wokening at the end of Phase 3. Even look at Scarlett Johansson, Black Widow, who has always been one of my favorite characters in the MCU. Now she's getting her own movie, and to me it comes off as an afterthought. Whereas, spoilers, but I'm sure at this point everybody has seen Endgame, they kill off Black Widow in the movie. So we're getting what seems to be just a one-off background story or origin story, and then she's done. So I think even to Scarlett Johansson, they're doing a disservice. They're doing a disservice to most of the original characters. Ant-Man 3, I don't know if we're ever going to see that. I think Paul Rudd doesn't even know if we're actually going to see an Ant-Man 3, which is one that I was actually looking forward to.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Ant-Man, the writing was on the wall in his second movie, where it kind of felt like he was a bit player in his own story. You know, as much as he was in it, the real thrust of the story was about Hope and her mother, and trying to bring her back from the quantum realm. And you just see how he's just treated as like a vehicle for her. They even called the movie Ant-Man and the Wasp because, you know, can't have him just take center stage and have his own movie. It has to be shared with someone else. And it's, you know, the Black Widow thing.
Oh yeah, no,
carry on, man.
Oh yeah, no worries. Yeah, sorry, folks. Like I said, we have a delay of about 2 seconds between an internet connection, so we have the occasional silence. Now I can't remember where I was going with that. So yeah, I'll let you go ahead.
All right, cool. So like you say with the Black Widow, you know, that was the kind of solo movie that we all wanted to see rather than Captain Marvel. You know, we were all excited for Black Widow. She's been this character that's gradually built up over the course of, you know, all these movies. And, you know, Scarlett Johansson has done a great job with her. And if they'd put a Black Widow movie in where Captain Marvel was, where it was situated, it would have done over $1 billion easily. You know, Scarlett Johansson is still a massive star and she could have driven it. But instead, you know, they had to launch Queen Brie Larson and Captain Marvel. And, you know, people will always go on about, well, you know, that movie made over $1 billion. It proved that it was successful, but it couldn't have been anything but successful at that point. The momentum of the MCU was completely unstoppable then. So it would be interesting to see if there's a Captain Marvel 2 when there isn't that same momentum, how it's actually going to do. I honestly don't think it's going to do nearly as well. People just won't be that enthusiastic for her. Not to mention the fact that she's kind of a terrible character that you can't do much with.
No, and that's the argument that I've made is Captain Marvel was successful because they positioned it as a lead into Endgame. And also, if you look at the censorship on the internet, just going into the, like, Rotten Tomatoes changed their whole site to protect this movie. I had my Captain Marvel videos. I had a video that I put up a few days before the movie came out. It was called "Captain Marvel is a PR Disaster," and it was actually the fastest trending video I've ever had. It made it had a little over 80,000 views in the first, I think it was 4 hours, which for my channel is almost unheard of. And then the video seemed to have gotten the attention of the wrong people. The video was demonetized, and my channel went haywire for a good 2 months after that. So it was successful because it was the lead into Endgame. Internet censorship, where anybody that said anything negative about this movie, and it wasn't just me, every YouTuber that was covering it at the time experienced the same thing. And I think, yeah, and I remember the other point that I was going to make about Ant-Man and the Wasp, the reason why they focused it on hope. If you look at the order in which these movies were filmed, I believe Endgame, most of it was filmed before Ant-Man and the Wasp, and it was definitely filmed before Captain Marvel. So I think it was there where probably a directive from Disney, but where the MCU started to change course. So I think Hope was shoehorned into that movie as the main character. And it's the same thing if you look at Endgame. It was filmed before Captain Marvel, and Captain Marvel, during the 15 god awful minutes she's in that movie, was just completely shoehorned into the plot. Like, she did not need to be there. And when she said she was going off to space to save whatever, everybody in the theater I was in cheered. So Captain Marvel, when they do Captain Marvel 2, I wouldn't be surprised if it could be, I could say I'd be wrong, but it might be a solo type disaster, because the MCU no longer has the momentum going into it. Endgame, for myself and a lot of people, really it was the end of the MCU. It's like, hey, we had this story, we followed it for 11 years. Endgame to me really felt like an end point. Outside of, I'm still excited for Black Widow, even though I know it's probably going to be a woke fest, and I ended up seeing Far From Home, and it was a decent movie. But for me, and I think for a lot of people, the MCU is the story arc that we've been following that finished with Endgame. So when Captain Marvel 2 comes out, probably near the end of Phase 4, that momentum is going to be gone. And I think the MCU might end up learning some hard lessons, kind of like Star Wars lessons. Nothing is too big to be destroyed. Nothing is unsinkable. And if I were Disney, I'd be a little worried, because even though they have more money than God, a lot of things are not working in their favor at the moment, Endgame aside.
Yeah, I think I do have a certain amount of confidence in the MCU in that they won't put out necessarily bad movies. Star Wars is a slightly different case, because you're dealing with a relatively small number of films that they've put out. Since the prequels, you obviously had like a 10-year gap almost. And then they've come back and they've put out these new batch of movies, and they've been very hit and miss, obviously. But Marvel has put out 20 movies in the past 10 years, and they have got it down to a fine art. You know, I've always likened it to McDonald's, because they know what works. They just churn out the same thing over and over. They can vary up some of the ingredients, but it's the same basic stuff you're getting. But what you will, so I don't think movies are going to outright flop from them, but what you probably will see is a general sort of downward trend in the amount of money that they're making. Partly because they've lost some of their most compelling characters, they've lost some of their best actors. You know, they're going to try and launch things like the Eternals and stuff. I don't think many people are going to care too much about them. Spider-Man is still a viable prospect, but for how long they're able to work out the whole rights thing with Sony, I don't know. But yeah, the MCU, I've said the same thing in a video of my own. I don't have the same interest in it now that we've got past Endgame. I don't feel like there's going to be that big overarching story to tie things together and propel the narrative forward. And without that, you've just got a bunch of individual movies, some of which might be okay, some of which might be kind of shit. And you know, it's going to be a little bit hit and miss now, I think. And so I think you're right in that respect.
It could be almost alternating
Sorry, I'm
between.
just.
one movie will be a woke fest and the other one will be a good movie. Far From Home wasn't a woke fest. I actually genuinely found myself enjoying that movie. I have some faith in possibly the second Doctor Strange movie. I think that one might be okay. Black Widow, definitely. Black Panther 2, I don't have much interest in. Thor, Love and Thunder, I think that's going to be horrendous. Captain Marvel 2, no. Guardians of the Galaxy 3, yes, although that it hasn't officially been announced, but it's been hinted it's going to be near the end of Phase 4. So Guardians of the Galaxy, yes. Beyond that, I don't know. It's I have a feeling that, ironically, if DC keeps going the right way, they might end up replacing Marvel as the premier comic book related series, because DC is always their animated movies have always been awesome, but they kind of shit the bed with, well, for the first 5 movies. They seem to be turning around a little bit, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the next few years.
Yeah, I kind of have said something similar in the past. Actually, it does feel like as Marvel is maybe starting to lose their way now, DC's finally finding their feet, and I actually wish them the best, because I I respect what they've tried to do, especially with the Zack Snyder movies. Like, I know obviously, not many people are huge fans of them. But when I look at something like Batman versus Superman, I respect what he was trying to do there. I mean, he failed, but he tried to do something different. He didn't try to just be another MCU clone. He tried to make it dark and gritty and moody. And it was a worthwhile effort, I think. So, I mean, if they can find a formula that works for them, then yeah, potentially they can take over. They do still have the amazing characters. They've got Batman, they've got Superman, they've got Wonder Woman. I think she's going to end up being a huge cash cow for them.
Yeah, well, it's with DC, even right now, like Wonder Woman, I think is probably one of the best live action movies we've had from pretty much any of these studios. Uh, Shazam, I got the 4K Blu-ray, but I haven't watched it yet. Aquaman, it was a good movie. It wasn't the best, but the fact that it didn't beat you over the head with SJW viewpoints for 2 hours was a winner there. Uh, Justice League was a disaster. I don't think it's. There were a number of factors that went into that. One is it's a throwing together of completely different visions of two different directors, and Zack Snyder, tragedy. So obviously it's understandable as to why he had to leave. And the studio rushed it out. So it's what could have been a great movie. It's just a complete disaster. Apparently the Snyder cut exists, but who knows if we might actually see it. But that might improve it somewhat.
Yeah. From what I understand, the movie was in its finished form, more or less, but they hadn't finished off the CGI. So, you know, seeing a movie with unfinished CGI would be a pretty unpleasant experience, I would imagine, because Zack Snyder would make heavy use of it, and I don't think they would sink the money in to finish that off for however much they think it's going to make. It's a shame, because I actually would love to see the Snyder version of Justice League. Because yeah, like you say, the finished version was just this horrible hodgepodge of two different directors' ideas, and I think, if you ever want to gauge which version you're looking at, you just look at Ben Affleck in it.
Yeah.
In the in the Snyder cut, he's lean and he's got like a beard and stuff, and then all of a sudden he's like clean shaven and he's gained like 30 pounds and he's really tanned. It's like they've obviously had to call him back from vacation and be like, Ben, I need you for reshoots.
Well, the big problem with DC is with Man of Steel, the original premise was flawed. They wanted to do the Dark Knight trilogy with Superman, and I'm sorry, but you can't do that with Superman. Batman, yes, it's a dark character. So dark works well with Batman. Dark doesn't work well with Superman. Superman is the exact opposite of that. So they've I think they've realized the error of the ways at this point, and they are repositioning it. But Man of Steel isn't a terrible movie, but the premise was flawed. Batman v Superman was a mess. Suicide Squad had potential, but it was a mess. Wonder Woman was genius. Justice League was a disaster. I like Aquaman. I keep hearing good things about Shazam. I might actually end up finally watching it tonight. So I have hope for the future.
Yeah. What I don't have any hope for is the Terminator franchise. I've obviously covered the trailer for Dark Fate. It looks horrific. Like it's just, I'm actually looking forward to it in a way just to see how much of an absolute disaster it's going to be. But I just feel bad for Linda Hamilton that they finally managed to get her back, and she's going to be in an absolute shit show.
Well, they are going to be because they've got Edward Furlong back too. I don't know. I guess he's sobered up enough to make a movie, but it's you've got the cast from Terminator 2, and this movie is going to be like I think Terminator 2 was the zenith of the Terminator franchise, and nobody has been able to really figure out where to go with it since, no matter how many directors and movie studios it's gone through. But it's actually the only thing you can do is actually do more damage to the legacy of Terminator 2. Like even obviously the politics which are in there, and we've seen that. Even without that, it looks like a bad movie. The CGI looks like crap.
Yeah.
It's like Star Trek Deep Space Nine did it better in 1993 than what I've seen in those trailers. So it looks terrible. And unless the trailers are very misleading, some people tend to think that way, where maybe it is going to be a good movie. I'm like, no, it isn't. The Terminator franchise is it's dead. It's been dead for decades. The closest we had to another decent Terminator movie was Terminator 3, and even that one had its issues. Salvation gave us, Christian Bale's epic rant. I don't know.
Yeah, that is literally all I can remember from that movie is just Christian Bale flipping his shit. It was just dull from what I recall. Terminator 3, yeah, like you say, it kind of almost made it. I guess Arnold managed to get himself back in pretty good shape. They had a decent enough storyline. The whole idea of Skynet being like software that was just spread across the internet, which seemed like a new concept at the time because it was that old. That was all pretty good. And the fact that it ended with Judgment Day, it didn't mess up the timeline too much. But then it just all went downhill from there. And like Genesis was an absolute disaster. It was probably the worst bit of casting I think I've ever seen in any movie.
No, and I remember seeing. I was 13 when T2 came out, and I remember seeing that movie in the theater and being absolutely blown away. For some of the younger people, it might be hard to understand, but we had never seen anything like that before. I think even now, I watch the movie at least once a year, and it still holds up. I think it's one of the best movies, not just one of the best sci-fi movies ever made, but one of the best movies, period. And I watch it once a year. I think I've owned it 3 times on Blu-ray. I have the slightly flawed 4K edition. At one point, I had the Laserdisc as collectors. I think I owned it twice on VHS. The movie is 28 years old. Yeah, 1990. Yeah, 28 years old. It still holds up today, and it's a marvel. And the fact that they keep screwing this up over and over again, including the Sarah Connor Chronicles, which never got finished. Like, I think it's just best to leave it as it is. Stop trying to drag this corpse out. You had a perfect movie, and you just keep diminishing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the main issue I have with the Terminator movies in general is you can only ever do one story. The Terminators have been sent back in time to kill someone who's important, and the heroes have to protect that person. And that's all you've got, basically. Salvation tried to do something a bit different, and it was just dull. It didn't really go anywhere, and nobody was that enthused about it. And so they went back to doing the same thing again with Genesis, and now they're going to be doing the same thing again with Dark Fate. And it's just, there's nothing else you can do with it, and that's the problem with Terminator. even really, T2 was kind of just a rehash of the first one. It was an excellent rehash, and I absolutely love it. But that's all it was.
Yeah,
By the way,
same
I'm seeing some stuff in the chat, guys. I apologize that I haven't been responding to any of the chats yet. I will definitely set aside time to respond to the super chats as much as I can. They are just flying by quicker than I can even read them and talk. So I am sorry. Please don't hate me.
Yeah. No, I think not only the same story over and over again, but I think the where they really screwed up is the fact that they took 12 years to come out with Terminator 3. Had they come out with it, say, 1994, 1995, and had James Cameron still been involved directing, say, had he done that rather than True Lies, which is also an excellent movie, which we're still waiting for a Blu-ray release. But I think had they done Terminator 3 around 1994, I think it would be a different story. But the fact is, they waited too long. The momentum had died out, and you're right. There is really only one story to tell in the Terminator franchise, and they're telling it over and over again. After Terminator 3, it didn't necessarily flop, but it didn't do as well as it could have done. They've tried 3 times since then to reboot it. I guess Salvation, they did try something different, but Genesis, they were attempting to do Terminator 2 all over again. It flopped. Dark Fate, they're trying to do Terminator 2 again, and it looks absolutely horrible. But I think the window for the Terminator franchise to succeed again was the mid 90s, and because they missed that window, I don't think we're ever going to see it come back to prominence.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that would have been the last time that Arnold could have convincingly played the Terminator before he, looked too old for it. I think, Linda Hamilton probably could have been convinced to come back if they had a good story. But from what I understand, I think Cameron was in pre-production for Titanic, and he was just swamped with work on that. And now, they've got him as an executive producer or something, which means absolutely nothing for Dark Fate. He's working on his 5 Avatar sequels.
Yeah. Oh no, he made a lot of money off Titanic, so I guess we can't really bemoan him that. But yeah, James Cameron tends to take forever on movies. I think True Lies, he did that right after Terminator 2. That was 3 years. Titanic, it took him 3 years to make that movie, so it was between in production from 94 through 1997. And yeah, and by the time Terminator 3 came out, outside of Arnold, nobody had any interest in having anything to do with it. And I think Arnold might have regretted that, because that was the last movie he did before disappearing for 8 years to go run California, which is another story altogether.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, by the time he came back from that, he was just way too old to do anything, and he was clearly not in shape anymore. One of the people in the chat actually asked me what was my thoughts on Alien and Aliens 2. I absolutely love both movies. I think that's a classic example of how you do a sequel. You expand upon the original idea, but you still keep it compelling and exciting. Aliens is genuinely one of my greatest action movies of all time, and possibly just generally my favorite movie. I think it's brilliantly paced, brilliantly acted, and I always wanted a pulse rifle when I was a kid, but I could never find one.
Yeah, no, actually, I agree with you. I think I saw Aliens. I think it was a year after it came out in 1987, and yeah, that it's the same thing with T2. That's another movie that I tend to watch at least once a year, but it blew my young mind. But it's the same thing with the Alien franchise that it is with the Terminator. They had 2 amazing movies, and then ever since then, it's shit the bed. The less said about Alien 3 and anything that followed it, the better.
Yeah, I think trying to merge it with Predator and do those Aliens versus Predator movies was a horrific idea. It was never going to work, and both of them are absolutely terrible. I didn't mind Alien 3, but it just felt depressing. I get what they were trying to do. Like they didn't just want to do another action movie, but it was just so slow and made me feel sad every time I watched it. So it was an unworthy follow up. And then Alien Resurrection was just weird. It was like they were trying to take a bit of everything, and it just didn't merge together very well.
Well, Alien 3, the problem with Alien 3 is it spent years in production hell, which is why it was delayed for so long. The vision that we saw, it isn't even David Fincher's vision, to the point that he will not even discuss Alien 3 to this day in interviews. There was studio interference. They wanted to rush production out. They started shooting before they even had a finished script. On the Blu-ray set, there is an alternate cut, which improves it somewhat, but again, it's the same thing that happened with Justice League: studio interference and trying to force something out because you have to have it out and it's not ready.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I'm just trying to read through the chat here because I'm conscious that we've been ignoring them. I apologize, guys. What else are you asking me here? We must discuss Aliens 3. It was so terrible. Yeah, pretty bad. What's that? Alien versus Predator was okay, but my God, Requiem, the sequel, was just horrible. Worse than Resurrection, I could even argue. Yeah, you could argue that quite easily. It also had the most pretentious name for the dumbest movie ever. Requiem. Fucking hell. I have to ask as well, what was your thoughts on the Prometheus movies? Because I feel like I always have to ask people that. It gives me a gauge of what sort of person they are.
Oh, Prometheus. Well, there was a lot of excitement when it came out. I didn't watch it in theaters. I picked up the Blu-ray, fell asleep the first time I watched it. Picked it up again a few years later. It was a premise they could have done so much with, but ultimately, it's a dull movie. It was a missed opportunity, and its follow-up was not much better. So, Prometheus, if you're looking for a cure for insomnia, sure. Other
Yeah.
than that, save your money.
It was a very pretentious movie, and listening to Ridley Scott talking about he didn't even seem to understand what made Alien such a good movie in the first place, and he went on this weird philosophical journey with Prometheus that nobody wanted to join him on.
Well, how many
So
years did that movie spend in that development hell? I tend to think it was like 5 or 6.
I think, yeah, I'm pretty sure. And then, yeah, I can't believe they greenlit a sequel. I guess Prometheus itself made enough money just on hype, and then Prometheus 2, yeah, awful. And I feel bad because they, oh God, what's his name? The guy that plays Magneto in the X-Men movies.
See, now that you brought it up, I can't remember his name. Oh no, Michael Fassbender.
Fassbender,
Yeah.
that's the one. Yeah, he just keeps getting put in shit movies, and it's such a shame because he's such a great actor.
Oh, we're getting a request to talk about. Oh, yeah, this is one that we've missed so far. 007.
007. All right, we shall talk about it now, guys, because I think it's time. I don't know about you. I am really excited at the prospect of a black woman finally playing 007 and potentially taking on the role of James Bond. I think it makes total sense.
I think it's brilliant. You know, who wants the excitement and misogyny of that toxic white male? And like my father, who has watched every James Bond movie going back to the first one in theaters, couldn't be more excited when I sent him the article. This is actually out of all the wokeness and just stupidity. This is the most ridiculous, over the top thing I've seen. Now, of course, we don't actually know where they're going to end up going with this, but I honestly thought it was a joke. It was on Twitter. People were sending me articles. I'm like, James Bond is a black woman. And I looked at like, holy shit, they're serious. So it's a situation where you almost don't know what to say. You could say, what the hell are you thinking? But it's even beyond that. It's going to be fun to watch. And I feel bad for Daniel Craig because I think Casino Royale is one of the best, if not the best, James Bond film. So he started out on such a high, and his reign is going to end up killing the franchise. So, yeah, it's going to be a work of brilliance in all the wrong ways.
Yeah, I genuinely think this is kind of just like, joking aside, I think it's just a bit of a marketing stunt. this, it makes sense that James Bond he's retired in this movie because he's getting older, and his code name has been assigned to another agent. That's fine. It makes sense. That's what they would do. I presume he comes out of retirement and then he ultimately gets his code name back again. If they actually wanted to go down this road of like, okay, he retires, this new actress who was in my favorite movie, Captain Marvel,
Oh
takes
yeah,
over the actual role
best movie of
of
all time.
Bond, and then the next movie's about her, it would just be insanity. It's if you want to have a cool movie with a female spy, do something like Atomic Blonde. That was a pretty decent movie. Just
Yep.
do something original. Don't try and take something that like has already been created and just take over it. Because that's the laziest possible way you can do something. And it's guaranteed to piss people off because what else can you feel? Like you're taking credit for someone else's work.
And that's what they do because they can't. And it's this case of every franchise. They can't come up with something successful on their own because nobody's going to watch it. So the only way to push these agendas is to hijack every major franchise and run them into the ground. Now, I think we can hope that this female 007 is just a one-off for this movie. I think and even the lines and crap that have come up and what we've learned about the movie, it sounds awful. But if we're lucky, it will just be a one-off, and then the franchise can go away for another 5 or 6 years, and hopefully this woke trend from hell will be done by then, and then reboot itself again, and then come back. But the way things are going, I would not be surprised if they go all out with this.
I don't know if this is a way of testing the water. They put these kind of announcements out there and they've got this actress kind of lined up, and it's like, right, we'll just see how people react to it. And if it's positive somehow, then we'll think about casting her as Bond in future. But I just hope that they recognize the kind of backlash against this. It's not just people living in their basements. It's people who genuinely like the franchise and they're just appalled at the idea of doing this.
I think my video on that has one of the highest like ratios of anything I've ever put out, and only 30 some odd % of my viewership comes from my own subscribers. So most of this are just people that are coming across the video through YouTube recommended.
Yeah.
And it's the same. I outside of my 5 or 6 regular trolls, there are a couple thousand comments on that video now, and I've gone through them. There is not one positive comment about this. And you look at any other site, you look at even, the more mainstream sites that are covering this, you're not going to find any positive comments about this anywhere. Where the common response is, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah. Rightly so as well. So yeah, it's a weird one. Yeah, someone's quite pointed out quite rightly in the chat. Daniel Craig's partially responsible for this slight change in direction. He hired
Yep.
the scriptwriter that they're using
Phoebe
to kind
Waller-Bridge.
Yeah, I can never remember her name, but I know that she wrote Killing Eve season 2. I'm pretty sure, which was fucking horrific. Like I didn't mind the first season. I thought it was a little bit different and a bit quirky, but season 2, they just like every straight white male character in it was just annihilated and killed most of the time. But yeah, he insisted that she be brought in, and I don't know why he thought that was a good idea, but he's a strange one as Daniel Craig.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what his intentions were, unless he was trying to reinvigorate it. This thing keeps being thrown around where Phoebe Waller-Bridge is one of the greatest writers out there. I'm like, did you watch Fleabag? For anybody who didn't, it's available on Prime, and some people went after me for this, but I thought I've watched both seasons of that and they were both crap. I'm like, and she is a hardcore feminist. Like she played BB-8 for Christ's sake. I'm like, where did they think this was going to be headed? And I don't get this hero worship of Waller-Bridge because I'm sorry, but I've seen her writing. It's crap. My opinion, but it's crap.
Yeah, I haven't watched Fleabag and I never intend to, but judging by her work on Killing Eve, she can write the occasional funny line, which is fine. That's all right. But to in terms of actually telling a story that people want to read, just nothing. It devolves into complete farce because I think at her heart, all she can really do is like quirky comedy, and that's not the sort of person you want writing on a Bond movie. And I
No.
think like Bond isn't a character that needs to become woke. He doesn't need to move with the times. Like he's one of those guys that's like your quintessential masculine man. And if he's a bit old fashioned and he beds women, that's who he is. Like we don't need to change him into something else. If you don't like that particular character, there's a million other woke characters out there that you can be watching in different movies. I don't understand this need to update and change everything just to make it suit our current political climate that nobody really agrees with, but they're all too scared to say it. It's frustrating, really, to see all these characters kind of tarnished like this because they end up becoming completely sanitized. And I think this is something I've noticed across so many different franchises. You end up with characters that don't have any bite to them anymore. They don't have anything that makes them compelling. They're just safe, dull, predictable, non-threatening characters. And nobody can get behind that because that's not what real people are meant to be like.
Yeah. And actually, yeah, did I actually say that she played BB-8? Well, maybe I am getting tired. Yeah,
Yeah,
L337.
yeah. BB-8, yeah, whatever that character was from.
I don't know. It's all crap. But I think actually the best example, and I was actually on a stream that I did earlier, and on doing new James Bond with a license not to hurt your feelings. Exactly. But Doctor
To
Who is
engage you in polite conversation with safe spaces.
yeah. But no, when you're talking about shallow characters, and I actually on this live stream that I did on the TARDIS Zone earlier this morning, Doctor Who is actually the best example of this, of how these SJW characters are just completely shallow. Whereas for the first 12, well, technically 13, if you count the War Doctor incarnations, there was some depth to this character. And in order to actually understand how to play the Doctor, you had to understand that it was this, I guess we could call it timeless being, the Time Lord itself. And each incarnation was just a cosmetic facade over the Doctor himself. And a lot of the acting was actually done with the eyes, where you could believe that this is, a being that has been around for hundreds, well, now thousands of years. When you look at Jodie Whittaker's interpretation of the Doctor, she purposely did not watch any of the 50-plus year history of the show and going into it, so that in itself showed disrespect. But the character itself, and it's just the perfect example of this because it is a shallow character. There's no understanding of who this character of the Doctor is. The background nuance, the look in the eyes, what makes the Doctor is completely absent. Instead, you've just got this shallow cookie cutter character that's just there to insult men. And it's the same thing with every franchise that has come out. Like, look at Ghostbusters 2016. There is no depth there. Look at what we're seeing with the new characters in Terminator 2. No depth there. Star Trek is an absolute travesty with what they've done with the characters on Discovery. And I'm still very worried about what they're going to do with Picard. So in trying to push these, what I'll call ideological imperatives, in trying to push this, you've given that precedence over interesting stories, over interesting characters. The whole, it's a vehicle to push these messages, and everything else gets lost by the wayside. And this is why, not only on an ideological level, but on a story level, on a narrative level, on a character level, it's why all these films fail, and why they will fail until either every studio goes bankrupt or they come back to their senses and start giving us real entertainment again. And it's just a question of which comes first.
No, I very much agree. Like the main problem you've got is writing, or sorry, should I say, telling a good story that's interesting and original and exciting with compelling characters that you can really root for, that is hard. That is hard enough by itself, even if you've got complete freedom to do it any way you want. But if you're then trying to do it with all these different constraints put on you by the sort of rules of social justice, then, you know, you've got to do this, you've got to portray certain demographics in a certain way. It's like trying to run a marathon with two broken legs. Like, it just becomes impossible. You've made it difficult for yourself when it shouldn't be. And this is what you end up with these, like you say, these social justice characters. They become just a shell. They're like a vehicle to get the politics out, because they don't know how to make an interesting character that embodies all this stuff.
Yeah, and we actually saw it happen within one era of Doctor Who, where the BBC, the diversity and inclusion strategy that was released in 2016, and it was it's the documents available online, but it was a series of directives as to what they were going to do going forward. And I can summarize it as white males are the devil and we don't want them on our network anymore. But you could actually see this within the Peter Capaldi era, where series 10 took place. It was the series the year after that document came out. And you could see that the whole narrative, like series 10 is awful, nowhere near as bad as what we're seeing now. But you could see even in that season, and even somewhat in series 9, these ideological ideas being pushed in, the Doctor's character being changed. And it started to take over the narrative completely. Like the last companion under Capaldi, her name was Bill, no personality whatsoever. We were reminded at every opportunity that she was gay, and that was the only reason she was there. So even the Capaldi Doctor Who era is actually, it's an interesting study and how this stuff flipped overnight. And it happened on, I think, pretty much every major BBC show. I used to love BBC content. I can't stomach it anymore. But it's, you know, it happened with everything. And it seemingly happened overnight. And it seems to be around 2015, 2016. And Ghostbusters seems to have been, world-class bullshitters. Jeff refers to Ghostbusters as Patient Zero, which I tend to agree with. And even though it failed, everybody seems to have adopted the Ghostbusters 2016 narrative. And we're 3 years away from that, 4 years away from the announcement, and it's still going on.
Yeah, I take what you say about the BBC 100%. Like, I know a lot of the guys watching this are watching from the States, but over here in the UK, we get a lot of BBC programming, things like The Bodyguard, Line of Duty. And what Bowlestrek is describing there is something I've 100% noticed myself. Like, you'll see these background scenes of like police stations. You'll see SWAT teams, like high-level government briefings and stuff. And I swear, like 70 or 80% of the people there are like either female or they're some kind of ethnic minority. There's practically no white guys anywhere to be found. And it's because of this diversity and inclusion strategy that BBC have got. They've mandated that certain things have to be shown on screen. There's got to be a certain number of minorities and protected groups shown on screen at all times. And every time you see them, they're always brilliant at what they do. Like,
yep.
I called it out once when I was watching an episode of Line of Duty with one of my friends. There was a scene where a bunch of characters were out bowling, and a guy went out, took a shot, got a gutter ball. One of his female friends stepped up to take her shot, and I just said to him, like, bet you she gets a strike. And sure enough, called it straight away. She got a strike, because we have to show women being amazing at everything, because that's, again, part of the BBC's mandate. And it just becomes really predictable because they've locked themselves into a pattern that they can't get out of.
And it's so obvious too when it comes up. And the thing that I find funny is I've been kind of locked in the middle of this Doctor Who debacle pretty much from the casting announcement 2 years ago. And some of the I have around 15% of my viewership is female, and they actually seem to be the most pissed off demographic in terms of what they've done to Doctor Who, where they, like, it makes, it makes them look bad. It's like, okay, yeah, so I can't succeed on my own, so I have to be uplifted. And you'll see that on pretty much any message board where it's actually female members that are angrier about this stuff than the males. So that should tell them something right there. When you're trying to boost this demographic, and even this demographic hates what you're doing, then maybe you should reevaluate things. But the problem is, because the BBC is now run by ideologues, that this is never going to change. And the only thing that will change at the BBC is if the license fee is canceled, which
I'd
honestly,
love to see that.
well, I don't know why they still have it, but if the license fee gets canceled and they have to succumb to the private market, they're screwed.
Just to explain this to the guys watching this from America, like, and if in case you don't know, like, we have, every person who lives in the UK has to pay a fee each year or each month, I think, to your TV license fee, and that money gets used to fund the BBC. And you've got no option; you have to pay it, and it funds shows like Fleabag and Line of Duty and Doctor Who, and we don't have a choice in that matter. Just so you know, so it's not the greatest thing, which basically means these networks aren't answerable to anyone because they don't have to make money. They get their finances already done for them. And what Bowlestrek is describing there, if they were to cancel that fee and they actually had to just compete like any other network or any other channel, they'd be fucked because people wouldn't take that kind of nonsense. Someone else has raised a point in the chat, actually. I really like this one. He's saying, it's been really funny recently. I work on TV in Scotland and they hire extras that look like a diversity hire poster, which is frankly bonkers if it's set in Scotland. That's 100%. Scotland is weird because it's like the whitest country on the planet. You barely see any, minorities around here. It's strange. I don't know why. Probably the most you would see would be people from India, because some of them moved here during like kind of the empire days, and then obviously their descendants live here. But yeah, it's a weird one. And if you're going to set a TV program in Scotland, 95% of your cast would be white if it was to be representative.
And somebody,
what have we got here? I'm just trying to look through some of the chat here because you guys have been giving me grief. If 2015 is the turning point, could it be linked with all the media attacking the Orange Man as he entered into politics and was elected precisely because he did not bend the knee to PC culture? Most probably. I think that played a big part. America is pretty much the center of most of our culture and most of our movies and TV shows. So whatever goes on there echoes around the world. I think there was a real panic as Donald Trump started to gain momentum. And people started to listen to him more and more, and the people there wanted to attack him. The mainstream media certainly wanted to find any way to lash out at him, and if they can play on people's fears by like producing movies or TV shows that try to address that, then yeah, absolutely they would. I think the Star Trek Discovery referenced that when basically the Klingons were described as being like Trump supporters. Yep. Because their slogan was like, keep Klingons the same or keep Klingons Klingon. Sorry, I'm fucking that saying up, but you get the point. Yeah, remain Klingon, that was it.
Make America
so again. Yeah, I think it's almost certainly part of that. And I'd love to see what they do if Trump gets elected again. 2020 could be a fucking incredible year. There's going to be some epic meltdowns if so.
Oh, well, you should see. Well, if anybody knows, I'm in Canada, and I'm sure everybody knows about our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, who is the poster child for wokeness gone wild. Yeah, Canada is in the midst of a right-wing swing. We have an election coming in the fall, and Justin Trudeau, after, thank God, only 4 years, is going to be handed his walking papers. But it's going to be fun to watch. Like the province I live in, which is Ontario, we have provincial premiers, kind of like for Americans, it's like our governor. We went from a very woke liberal government for 15 years to a very hardcore conservative government last fall. So contrary to what the world believes, Canada is not as woke as you think. And thank God we're going to be fixing our country soon.
I think that you're going to probably see a lot of this everywhere, really. We've had this pretty hardcore left wing swerve, throughout the early 2010s. And you get up to the sort of 2015, 2016 point where Trump gets elected. And it really marked a turning point in a lot of ways. You see it in governments across Europe. Apparently, a lot of these right-wing parties are gaining ground for various reasons. We've gone through a whole bunch of prime ministers over the past few years in the UK while we tried to sort out Brexit. But again, Brexit was another response to that. And say that again, sorry, Paul.
Oh, yeah, no, now you're on your third PM in 3 years.
Yeah, and it's Boris Johnson, and he's batshit crazy, and I love it. I can't wait to see what he does. Yeah, he's different. I'll say that about him. I do like his energy, and I like his sort of enthusiasm and his positivity. It's nice to have a politician that actually has a good, positive outlook. He just feels like everything's been fucking doom and gloom since 2016, and I'm getting a bit sick of it, frankly. Yeah. So.
Well, Theresa May,
I think one of my buddies summed it up best. I think one of my friends summed it up. He's like, Boris is the kind of guy you would meet him for dinner one evening, and you would end up in a rowboat going down the Thames at 3 a.m., pissed as a fart, and absolutely loving it. And I could totally see that happening. He's that kind of guy.
Well, I think what we're seeing is, entertainment traditionally up until the past few years has always echoed what the modern sentiment is like. But what's happened now, and I've studied film, well, not just for my own, I'm not one of those film majors, but I've studied cinema as a hobby all my life. And what we've seen up until 2016 is your movies and your TV shows have always reflected society at large. Right now we are seeing something different, where society over the past, I'd say since 2012, has swung so far to the left. And, that's how society goes politically. It's always a pendulum swing one way or the other. And occasionally, if you're lucky, it will rest in the middle. But what we saw in 2016, and you can look at the election of Donald Trump, you can look at Brexit, any number of factors. Society swung pretty far to the right in 2016. And Hollywood, the BBC, everyone decided, nope, we're not going to accept this. We're going to swing even farther to the left. So it's this odd thing that we've never really seen to this extent in entertainment before. And this is why they're self-destructing. And a lot of this had been set up because I think everybody was expecting Hillary Clinton to win, not to get political, but thank God that didn't happen. But they expected the world to go one way. And the world went another way, but they decided not to adjust themselves to the way the world went. And that's why we're getting just the shit fest that we're getting now.
Yeah. Potentially a bit of sour grapes for people who, wanted things to go one way and they kind of didn't. There's always going to be a bit of that. But I guess we probably don't want to get too political on a live stream about getting drunk and talking about movies and nonsense like that. Yeah, I will ask you, what's your what's your thoughts on the rise of Skywalker? How do you think it's going to redeem the franchise?
No, I think Star Wars is dead in the water. I've seen every Star Wars movie in the theater from Return of the Jedi up until I didn't see Solo, but every movie until Solo, there was always an excitement that was in the air that would persist for about a year before the movie came out, including, the not so great, but not as bad as what we have now, prequel movies. So, but there was the anger that was directed at The Last Jedi has turned into complete apathy. People just don't care. And I could be wrong, but I think The Last Jedi might actually perform lower than Solo. There is that much non-interest. Nobody is talking about these films. In fact, even in terms of making fun of Star Wars at this point is pretty much passé. It's over and done with. The movie is a lame duck. So it's going to be exciting to watch it crash and burn. And it doesn't matter what they do with the movie at this point. You have characters that nobody cares about. Like they're the three dullest main characters in Star Wars history. You killed off Han Solo. You killed off Luke Skywalker and are going to bring him back as a Force ghost, probably. Uh, Leia, obviously, we can't have her back, so they wasted that opportunity. The Last Jedi was nothing but an insult, or well, a stab towards quote unquote toxic masculinity, so that pissed everyone off. So I think this movie is going to be one of the biggest flops in Hollywood history. Now, I'm saying I could be wrong. I'm not going to say my word is the law, but I think we could be looking at disaster. And I think it's a well-earned disaster because Solo, which was a better movie than The Last Jedi, average, mediocre at best, but better than The Last Jedi, the anger at The Last Jedi was taken out on Solo, and it was only peripherally related to it. Episode 9 is the direct sequel to the movie that everybody hates. So if they really want to take their anger out on Star Wars, if they thought Solo was bad, it's going to be nothing compared to what I'm not saying it's law, but what I think is going to happen with episode 9.
Yeah, I very much agree. Like I've turned this over in my head, almost as like a thought exercise. Like if I was writing The Rise of Skywalker, like what could I possibly do myself to redeem it? Where could I take it? And I just drew a blank because we've got a bunch of characters now that don't matter. You've got Rey, who's the least interesting main character you could ever ask for. You've got Kylo Ren, who's kind of too evil to be redeemed, but he's not really bad enough to be a threatening bad guy, and he's already been defeated twice by Rey, so he's no longer a threat. Your main threat in Snoke, who was pulling all the strings of Kylo Ren, is now gone. Luke is gone, in physical form at least. Leia's only going to have a small role, presumably, while they explain the fact that she's dead. There's nothing left. And this is why, I don't know if you've seen this this theory that Mike from Red Letter Media had, that potentially time travel is going to be involved in this movie, that they're going to find a way to travel back in time, because that's the only direction they can really go with this. There's no way to move forward with it.
Well, it's retconning is the only way about it. Like the thing about The Last Jedi, I despise this movie, but I've watched it 8 times. And the only reason that I've watched it 8 times is I find it absolutely fascinating as to how Rian Johnson somehow managed to screw this up on every level possible. And trust me, it gets worse with subsequent viewings. But they have nowhere to go from the end of this. And the movie ends with 12 or so people celebrating while everybody else is dead. You've gotten rid of the only villain that was interesting. You can't go back to any of your main characters because you've either killed them on film or they're gone in real life. There's nowhere they can go with this. And Kylo Ren is not threatening. He just comes off as a whiny child. And this is supposed to be our big bad. Like there's, other than saying, The Last Jedi was a dream. We're just going to start over again, and it would take them 2 movies at least to retcon everything they screwed up in that movie. So there's nowhere they can go with this. The only thing I'm curious about to any degree with Episode 9 is that how they're going to write themselves out of this mess. So I find that curious. I don't even know if I'll see it in theaters. I probably won't. I'll probably just wait till I get it for free or something. But there's nowhere they can go with this. And actually, I'm kind of lucky because a friend of mine actually buys Blu-rays and rips them and then just gives me the discs. So that's where I get to watch a lot of these terrible movies for free. That's where I got my Last Jedi from. That's how I saw Captain Marvel, because I refused to pay a cent on that movie. So I may not watch Episode 9 until I actually get it for free and then make fun of it.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's the way to go. It's awful. I'm gonna read through some of the chats now. I am sorry, you guys, that I have been neglecting you. Let's see here. Rey goes back in time and invents the Force and teaches it to Yoda, and Jar Jar creates the first lightsaber, which swings both ways. why not? Might as well. Nothing else makes sense about it.
Jar Jar Binks was Snoke.
So this chat going to be 2 hours. Yeah, that would be good. Do you have any advice on how to create a backstory for your characters? Just wondering how to create it and what relation it has to making your characters multidimensional. There's no great secret to creating a backstory for a character. The best way is just to think about what kind of character are they now? What role do you need them to kind of fulfill in your plot? And what kind of personality do they have? And then start thinking of reasons that they might have been shaped that way. You know, what experiences might they have had that have turned them in? If they're a cynical person, what made them that way? If they're highly emotional and unstable, have they been through some traumatic experience that's messed them up? Anything like that. You start from where you're at, and then you can work backwards. And the more you start to fill it out, the more you'll come up with ideas on how to fill in those details. And you can get creative with it. There's lots of different things you can do. What else have we got here? Blade casting. Yeah, I don't know much about the new guy. I really liked Wesley Snipes as Blade. I loved Blade 2, really good movie. Third one was kind of shitty, and from what I understand, Wesley Snipes was kind of shitty behind the scenes.
Yeah, there are legendary stories about that.
I honestly, I don't know if this is true, but I hope it is, that he refused to open his eyes in a couple of scenes and they had to CGI them open. I really hope that's true.
Yeah, I've heard
you're a fraud drinker, you're not drinking at all. It's a lie. I am actually drinking tonight. I'm just not as drunk as I normally am when I make my videos.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say, yeah, we're both, because this is a live stream, we're both slightly out of character, whereas I was joking before we started the stream, if I were to keep up the yelling, ranting personality that I have in my scripted videos for 2 hours, we'd finish the stream by watching me have a fatal heart attack. So, yeah, no, I couldn't keep that up either.
But don't worry, I'll finish this stream by telling you all to go away now. So that you'll get that at least. Can you please review Fargo, the series? I could if I've watched it. I haven't gotten around to seeing it yet. I apologize for that. There's just too many shows and not enough time. Blade 3 was awesome. It introduced Proto Deadpool. Yeah, it gave Ryan Reynolds his chance to do action. So good on him. And any interest in Halo? Not really, to be honest. I'm more of a PlayStation guy.
I have a PlayStation and an Xbox, but I'm more of a casual gamer. I've never played Halo, believe it or not.
Yeah, I played Halo 3, I think it is, the one where Cortana dies, and they kind of humanize the Master Chief a bit more. It was fine, perfectly good shooter. I enjoyed that, but I was never like a massive fan of the Halo series. What's Gamora? Don't know, haven't watched it. Get to bed now. Star Trek Picard, I'm interested enough to watch it. I'm cautiously optimistic, but I've heard a few things that indicate high levels of wokeness to it. So I'll see what happens. I love Patrick Stewart though, so I hope they have respect for him. Have you seen Stargate SG-1? Yes, I fucking have, and I love it. It's got a special place in my heart. That and Farscape, I love both of those shows. Tomb Raider movie sequel. I presume you were asking about them.
Oh yeah, no, I was
Sorry, what was that?
Somebody questioned Last of Us 2 to be a woke fest. God, I hope not. Like, no.
Yeah.
It might be, but Last of Us Part 1 is the best video game I've ever played. It seems to be going
that kind of kick in the intro made me think, yeah, maybe they're going to go that way. Naughty Dog have a bit of an interest in history with wokeness. As far as I understand, The Last of Us kind of the spin-off game that they had, which was like a prequel with Ellie, I think that had similar elements to it. That being said, I love the Uncharted series, and I actually quite enjoyed Uncharted: The Lost Legacy. I thought, the two main characters there were good. They had good banter. They were fun. I really like Claudia Black doing voiceovers. Probably goes back to my Farscape days. But yeah, we'll wait and see on that one. I'm not entirely sure how it's going to go.
Yeah. Well, it's actually you
Do I
mentioned
think anime
Uncharted.
could save entertainment? I'm not sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just saying. Yeah, you mentioned Uncharted 4. Actually, I haven't played the Lost Legacy. It kind of looked like a woke fest. Although Uncharted 4 is one of the best games I've ever played, so I might actually just pick that up to check it out. So you said it wasn't the woke fest I was fearing.
The Lost Legacy, no, it's fine. It's just two pretty good characters voiced by good actresses, and it's not about proving that they're superior or anything like that. They get into scrapes. They have good chemistry, and it's a fun little game. I actually wish they'd made it bigger and just made it a full Uncharted game, because it's clearly just a bit of DLC that's been buffed up into a full game. Critical Drinker is Father Jack. Yeah, he's my hero. Feck off! Anyone watch Battlestar Galactica back in the day? Great show. I presume you mean the rebooted Battlestar Galactica. Yeah, I watched that. I really liked it. I thought it had a shit ending, but I really liked the more grounded, sort of realistic take on space combat, and actually how the Battlestars operated and everything. It was a brilliant show, and it had some great actors in it. So loved it. Rutger Hauer did a couple episodes of Lex. That's news to me. I never saw him in it, unless he was like behind the scenes or something. I used to quite enjoy Lex, though. It was absolutely batshit crazy. And Bowlestrek, you might know about this, but I think it was a Canadian show.
Um, I think it was. I'm relatively sure it was shot in Toronto, although everything is shot in Toronto these days, including Discovery. I haven't watched Lex since I think it's been at least 20 years. It was made in the late 90s. But yeah, it was an acid trip on TV. I love that show. At some point, I actually might pick it up on DVD.
Cool. Yeah, I want to read the super chats. Just a quick question. Does anyone know how I can filter the chats so I can just see the super chats? Because I don't want to miss them.
I'm just looking at this right here. Yeah, because I haven't done super chat live streams either because my channel is not monetized. I actually think, and this is showing my ignorance because I don't do a lot of live streaming. I think the super chats actually disappear after, because yeah, I've got the chat up and I can't find them either.
Yeah, I thought you could filter them and they would stay. I can set it to top chats or live chat so I can see everything, but I thought I could bring up all the super chats. All right, I am going to keep trying. Every super chat that comes up from now on, I will drop what I'm doing and respond to it. This is a sign that I've obviously had too much to drink tonight, or not enough.
Worst case scenario, during the replay, when you go back to the video, we'll show the super chats. So after the fact, you can see them as well. So they're not completely lost. But yeah, it's learned something new as well myself. Yeah, the super chats actually disappear.
Fuck. I apologize to anyone who has sent me a super chat already. I can only apologize for not responding to it at the time. Like I say, I'm sure I've been on other live streams where we've gone back to the super chats like 4 hours later after they were sent and responded to them all.
I don't know. I'm wondering if that's actually a setting somewhere in Google. Well, yeah, I'll have to look into that. Yeah, no, yeah, they're definitely not here. That's odd.
What's the best and most deep porno plot? I don't tend to watch them for the plots, I'll be honest with you, so I can't answer that one very well.
Well, really? That's the only reason to watch them.
There seems to be... Yeah, you need to build up. No, I'm getting a lot of references to Red Dwarf as well there. Thank you. It's always appreciated. Give Quiche a chance. And yeah, smoke me a kipper. I will be back for breakfast. What's your favorite classic sci-fi series or
Oh wait,
movies?
actually,
I
Undoom just gave
fucking
a
love
super
all
chat
the...
in the stream control room. Oh yeah, I think Undoom just answered our question. If you pull up the
So,
stream control room, the super chats should be in there.
all right, give me a second. You can tell this is a very professional operation that I'm running here, guys. Sorry. Right, I'm in the control room right now. And it's not really giving me anything apart from this. All right. Nope, weirdly, it's just showing me and you, and nothing that's coming from the chat. Oh, wait, here we go.
We just
Nope,
put somebody to
all I've
sleep.
got is me and you, which is... Yeah, sorry.
Well, yeah,
Right,
sorry
I'm going to
guys.
answer the super chats that are here. Yeah, great to see you getting more attention. What is the fantasy sci-fi book that you would like to see get a film or TV treatment? Oh, good question. A lot of the ones that I've read have already had books and sorry, I've already had film treatment. I've loved Dune back in the day. It was a great book that I've read that at least 3 times, and the movies haven't really lived up to the promise of it, unfortunately. Keep being critical and keep being drunk. Guaranteed. That's what I live for.
At some point, I'll break my rule about not drinking on streams, and the two of us will get just bombed, and it'll be a fun time.
Yeah. So, what about yourself, Bowlestrek? Have you got a book that you would like to see get turned into a film?
Good question. To be honest, I don't actually read a lot of fiction. Most of what I read is nonfiction. I read a lot of political stuff and things like that. I'm in real life. I'm very boring. What I actually would like to see are more Terry Pratchett books adopted into film. We had Good Omens earlier this year with Neil Gaiman, but I think Prime might be doing this. But Terry Pratchett, well, passed away now, but he's my favorite author of all time. So I would love to, really any of his books. There's actually one that I like called Unseen Academicals, which is actually, for some reason, not one of his more highly regarded books. But that one I would actually love to see made into movie. Guards is another one, which I think there was a bad animated movie made of that at one point. But yeah, at the top of my list would be anything by Terry Pratchett. 3 books have been adapted. They were supposed to adapt more, and then nothing happened after that.
Okay, cool. Let's see. So you're both not drinking right now because I am, just because of the rep. Well, as it happens, I am in fact drinking. I've got a nice glass of gin, which I like to have every once in a while to vary things up, and it goes down smooth. I'll say that.
I am having, oh, this is how boring I am. I'm having Nestle Pure Life sparkling carbonated water with 0 calories and
Jesus
no taste.
Christ. You see, I invited you on thinking you were a man of like mind, and this is what you're giving me. You're not
Yeah.
giving me anything to work with here.
Okay, we're just gonna pretend it's no. I've actually got my Jack Daniels. It's I'm bombed.
That's better. That's better.
Yeah, somebody just called me soy
Yeah,
boy.
I was gonna.
No, this stuff doesn't even have soy. It literally has no taste whatsoever. I got it on sale at Walmart.
So you're just like a nothing boy.
Yeah. Oh wait, if you switch to old YouTube Studio Classic, then press Community, then Super Chat's done. So yeah, I think if you go into YouTube Studio to pull up the Super Chats, just go to the old format rather than that new disaster they're schlepping on us. It should be in there. It's in the Undoom gave you
All
specific
right.
directions in here.
Give
Yeah.
me 1 second, guys, while I go in and find this. And shit, man, hopefully it'll work. And I will respond to all of your super chats. People have been asking me as well, why am I not currently on EFAP? Funnily enough, they don't invite me on every week. But I am going to be on the 22nd of August because they're going to be doing a 24-hour EFAP, which sounds terrifying, but they're going to have various guests on at various times. So I'll be one of them, apparently. So once I know my slot, I'll let people know. Let's see.
Oh, some people are leaving. Sargon started streaming. 24-hour fapping.
Oh,
No,
shit.
not today.
There's only so much that you can handle.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah,
we're
they
looking
are
at
quite
this
good. They're always good fun.
See, guys, this
Here we
is
go.
as raw as it
Right,
gets.
so community and super chat. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I fucked this one up big time. Right, here we go. So I'll go back down. Check out Mr. TARDIS Reviews Twitter. I used to genuinely like that guy, but he's beyond help these days. All right, I will check that out. Get on
He has
EFAP, you
declared himself to
inebriated
be my
fuck.
special
I
enemy.
love you. Thanks. Right. Bowlestrek, when can we expect you on EFAP? Good question. Bowlestrek, do you want to answer that one?
As part of a minor channel relaunch I'm doing next month, I plan on actually doing more live streams on my own channel and on additional channels. This is actually, I think, the 6th live stream I've ever done. I've done a few with Nerdrotic, a couple with the TARDIS Zone and Tharis. So, I'm going to be wide open to live streams. As I'm sure you can tell, I'm a little all over the place when I'm not on script. But yeah, no, anybody that wants to have me on, big, small, I'm perfectly game.
Cool, man. Right, next one right, Captain Marvel in Madame Tussauds now. I will have to head there next time I'm down in London and punch it. Next one is great vids, mate. Breath of fresh air to hear honest, well thought out opinions. I'm currently reading Redemption as well. Very good read. Go away now. Thank you, my friend. I very much appreciate it, and I hope you enjoy Redemption. Drinker, thanks for being so based. I love your content, and thanks for speaking out against the nonsense in the Western world. I'm not the hero that you guys need or the hero that you deserve, but I'm trying to do my best. Any chance you all saw Shin Godzilla? It makes me excited for the future of Toho. Also, personally, I'd love a series of videos on the Halo franchise. I haven't seen Shin Godzilla. Not too well up on the Japanese versions. I know that every American version of Godzilla I've seen has been fucking terrible. I haven't even seen the recent one because I've heard nothing but terrible things about it. But I might get around to watching it just to take the piss out of it. John Robertson, very hungover but happy to be here. Man, you've started early. I respect to you, sir. Thank you for coming on the stream, even though you're hungover. Best thing to do is get drinking again, hair on the dog and all that. Next one is someone sent a live chat with nothing in it. Sorry, a super chat with nothing in it. Sorry about that. If 2015 is the turning point, could it be linked with all the media attacking the Orange Man as he entered into politics? Yeah, I think we talked about that already.
We
most
decided
probably.
to stray away from the political discussions.
Yeah, it just makes people angry. So fair enough. But yeah, we're caught up with the super chats now, at least, I think. Or are we? Brandon Silva, you just sent $20. Thank you very much, sir.
think what happens is
I can't see your
apparently
actual chat.
the YouTube are jerks with some of the super chats, and I think if somebody says something that they flag as against their terms of policy, which is broad in the extreme, I think it actually deletes the chat or the question.
Yeah. Another one. Have either of you watched Under the Skin? It's an interesting and unsettling sci-fi film set in Scotland. Yes, that's the Scarlett Johansson one. I actually almost got a chance to be in that, believe it or not. I used to be an extra on TV shows and films and stuff. And that was one of the movies that they were casting for, but I wasn't available that week, so I couldn't be in it. So I missed out on my chance to meet Scarlett Johansson. And that's never stopped hurting, if I'm honest with you.
Actually, I got to check that out.
But yeah, it's basically an alien who comes to Scotland and they try to seduce men to get impregnated by them. A drinker, I am severely disappointed and have lost all respect for you as an entertainer and a man. Still want to suck your toes though, Daddy. Thank you, sir. I'll get back to you on that one. Yeah, that'll haunt you for the rest of your days, missing your chance with Scarlett Johansson. Yeah, it hurts. Interestingly, apparently some of the scenes that they shot for that, it was just random people on the streets of Glasgow with her really awkwardly trying to chat them up. And their reactions were real because they couldn't work out what the fuck was going on. So fair enough. I mean, to be honest, it's Glasgow, so she's pretty lucky she didn't get knifed. Harry McDowell, I know you're busy, but if you have a bit of time, please watch The Expanse on Amazon Prime. It really is brilliant, and the 4th season is coming up. I have heard so much about this show, and I have never seen it, and I feel like I ought to set aside some time for it because people rave about it.
Oh, it's
Bowlestrek, have you heard anything?
Oh yeah, the
Expanse.
Yeah, I've got the first 3 seasons on Blu-ray. It is one of the only non-crap science fiction shows out there. It is what Star Trek Discovery should have been. Amazing character depth, brilliant story arcs, even the way it's shot. It's shot in Toronto. And not only is, I don't know if everybody in the chat or anybody has heard about this, but it came out yesterday. So Series 4 is going to be premiering on Amazon. It actually just already got renewed for a Season 5. So we're going to get at least 2 more seasons of The Expanse. So I'm pretty sure it's now available worldwide on Amazon. It should be in the UK. So yeah, it's actually, if you have Amazon Prime, it's worth checking out. It's one of the few decent TV shows left.
Cool, man. Brandon Silva, what are your opinions about everything getting gayed up? Okay, so it's fine having like gay representation in movies and TV shows is perfectly fine, and if it makes sense for the character to be gay, and it's some element of them, if it's going to affect their relationships, something like that, by all means do it. But if you just throw it in there for no reason, it just sticks out like a sore thumb because you can see it was just done to tick a box and it becomes tokenism. So one of the ones that I referenced recently was in Stranger Things, season 3. Steve has got a co-worker at the mall that he works with called Robin, and he has a relationship with her throughout the season, and it culminates in the two of them talking together, and all of a sudden she just comes out and says that she is gay, and it just feels like such a weird moment because it feels like it was just put in there to tick a box, basically. And that's when I disapprove of it because it's just there to have inclusion, and I don't really get the point of it. If it's an important aspect of the character, fine. Otherwise, why do it?
It took me out of it completely. And I know you have mixed feelings on season 3, but aside from it improves a lot in the second half. But yeah, that just took me out of it completely. Also, I'd rank that in with the scenes at the newspaper, which were there to show nothing but toxic masculinity, which also took me out of it. but it's like certain characters and
Yeah,
certain
it
things
had
that are
Jake
there.
Busey in it though.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
It
no,
had
it
Jake
was well
Busey in it,
done.
which gives it points for me.
It was
But yeah,
entertaining.
the thing that made the scene that made me laugh is when the horrible emaciated skeleton of Nancy gets into an argument with Jonathan, and they're almost competing to see who's been more oppressed. Like he's from a poor family and she's a woman, and they're literally arguing about who has the harder life, and it just made me laugh because I was like, that is peak 2019 right there. Just two people arguing about who's more oppressed. People in the 80s wouldn't have done that, man. Barrett Long, this is another super chat. Considering the genre of your books, did you take inspiration from Tom Clancy? If so, what's your favorite work by him? I didn't really take inspiration from Tom Clancy, although I've read quite a few of his books. My favorite one of his is Debt of Honor, when the Japanese kind of stage an attack on America to cripple all their navy and win back a bunch of islands that they lost in the Second World War. It's a really good book, and it's a brilliant sort of techno thriller. Good Tom Clancy novel. I wish you wouldn't criticize Nancy's physicality so harshly. I'm sorry. She doesn't have one though. She's just bones, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, it's I noticed that as well. Well, I guess I guess aren't they thin shaming now anyway? So I think woke Hollywood would disapprove of that as well. But yeah,
Probably.
I tend to
It would be
agree.
nice if you just had a who Erica was the worst. Who's that character actually for? I've no idea. I don't know how much of it was the character and how much was the actress playing her, but wow, she was terrible. Every time she opened her mouth, I just had to like grit my teeth and try and get through that scene. She talks like so exaggerated. I don't know how to say it. It's like a middle school Christmas play or something. It's just really weird. I don't know why they picked her out of all the people they probably could have got who were much better. Uh, why are your books about the CIA and not Scotland Yard, Interpol, or MI6? Mostly because I like to write about places that I haven't been or places that I don't go very often, because writing some crime drama set on the streets of Glasgow would just be boring as fuck to me. It just would make me want to kill myself. Right. No, nothing else here. Worst actor is Ben Affleck. Ooh, tough one. I actually didn't mind him in Batman versus Superman. I think he's an okay Bruce Wayne. Bowlestrek, I'm not sure what you feel about him, but I actually quite liked him. I thought he was a decent Batman. He definitely brings like the size and the physicality to the role. Possibly a bit
Um,
old
no,
casting
I
wise,
tend
just
to
for
agree.
an ongoing series.
No, I actually I don't know. I think one of the few good things about that movie was actually Ben Affleck's performance, and he surprised a lot of us. Uh, Affleck, he's a good actor, but also a candidate. Most of his early work would be worst actor candidate material, which Gigli is probably the worst thing I've ever seen. But he can pull off a good performance. Look at Gone Girl, Argo, things like that. So Ben Affleck can act. He's gotten better with age. And as much as I dislike Batman v Superman, his performance is not one of the issues I have with that movie. He pleasantly surprised me with the way he pulled it off.
Cool. We've got Daisy Ridley is truly awful. Yeah, I'm not going to argue with that one. She's just a boring person to look at, and it probably sounds harsh, but when I see her on screen, some people command the screen, and you just can't help but look at them, and they really grab your attention. But she is not one of them, and the fact that they've made her the main actress in this enormous franchise is just such a bad move. She can't even act particularly well, so yeah, not a good choice.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the chat right here.
Yeah.
Also, yeah,
We're getting some
I've
love for Ben Affleck, though. So Batman versus Superman was poorly written. Agreed. Affleck was great. Yeah, I'll give him that.
somebody said, any thoughts on
And
the new
thinking
Picard
use.
trailer? Yeah, and just in case anybody's
Yeah,
wondering, we have
I think we talked about this
delay.
a little bit earlier. Yeah. Yeah, really like Picard as a character. Loved him in The Next Generation. And yeah, I hope they can do him justice. I hope they bring him back in a smart way, because getting Patrick Stewart to come and do this character again after like 15 years is no small undertaking. So I'd like to think they at least, they at least will do him justice.
Yeah, and I think somebody was bringing up, let Bowlestrek finish one sentence. We covered this at the beginning of the stream, but there's actually a technical issue on one of our ends where there's a delay of between 2 to 4 seconds between when each of us speaks, so we're slightly out of sync. So it's we're not talking over each other purposely. It's just that's kind of the way the internet hates us today. I don't know. Maybe it's the Google.
Yeah, sorry. I'm not trying to cut Bowlestrek off. I am just like we're having to kind of guess when each person is like done talking and then start from there. So if we kind of talk over each other occasionally, I apologize. I'm not trying to like cut him off. Drinker, you're a hero in our home. Oh, sorry. Thank you. We'd like to buy you a drink for your good health, sir. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Yeah, biggest issue with Patrick Stewart. He's 79, working on 80 years old. Yeah, he's getting on a bit now. That's why I think do this show now before he's not capable of doing it anymore. I mean, it's fine that he's playing an aged version of Picard. He's still a great actor, even if he doesn't have the kind of physicality. And hopefully he can still bring it, I guess.
He does look good for his age.
Fast and Furious, Hobbs and Shaw. Sorry, on you go.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, yeah, actually, Patrick Stewart looks amazing for his age. He's kind of like William Shatner in that way, where they're older, but they just don't seem to age. So I think Patrick Stewart can pull it off. I don't think they can get more than 3 seasons out of this, if it even goes that far. But it could be, William Shatner was acting well into his mid-80s and could still pull it off. And Patrick Stewart, I have faith in him, because keep in mind, we're not doing full seasons like we were with The Next Generation. These aren't 26 season episodes. I believe Star Trek Picard, the first season is going to be 8. So I think he can pull it off for 8 episodes. 26, because of his age, yes, would probably kill him. But I think with the minimized workload, I don't think we have too much to worry about. We will see, though. Again, I'm always willing to admit when I'm wrong, and it could be a disaster. But I think right now one of the few bright spots might be Stewart's performance.
Yeah, I think the thing Patrick Stewart had going for him is that he just fucking always looked old. Like, even when he started doing The Next Generation, he looked kind of old even back then. Like, I guess the fact that he lost his hair didn't help him. And because of that, he hasn't aged that much. Like, if you start old, then you can't go much further from there. Someone asked what was my favorite Star Trek series. Favorite TV series was The Next Generation. My favorite kind of era was probably the original series movies, when they were sort of running in the 1980s. Yeah, they were definitely my favorite films. The Wrath of Khan is without doubt my favorite Star Trek movie of all time. Everything that they've done with the rebooted new timeline is an absolute disaster by comparison.
Yeah, I think for me, the original series has always been my favorite series and my favorite era. I grew up with them. I've been watching them since I was 5. I've probably watched every episode. I would be at this point probably 200 or 300 times over my lifetime. So for me, and a lot of it is probably nostalgia as well, but for me, the original series holds a special place. The Wrath of Khan, yeah, it's up with T2 as one of the best movies ever made. Modern Star Trek, it varies back and forth between the Next Generation and Deep Space Nine, but I'd say I'd veer a little more towards Deep Space Nine, even though they were ripping off Babylon 5, but I didn't know that at the time, so I still like it. Voyager, to be honest, kind of crap. I could go into that, but that would take for it was a concept that didn't work. Enterprise, 2 terrible seasons and 2 brilliant seasons, then it was canceled. And everything that we've had since Enterprise was canceled in 2005 has been complete crap.
Yeah, no arguments here. Who had the worst acting performance of this Star Wars group? Mark Hamill, Hayden Christensen, or Daisy Ridley? Wow. I'm not going to say Mark Hamill because honestly, like in The Last Jedi, he did his absolute best with terrible material. I felt so bad for him. He really gave it his all. Hayden Christensen, yeah, it's a close one between him and Daisy Ridley. Again, I think they just gave him crap material to work with. I don't think he's necessarily a terrible actor. He didn't have much there. Daisy Ridley, she's just flat for me. She doesn't emote. She doesn't command the screen like other actors do. She can show a bit of emotion, which is fair enough, but I just never get anything from her. I find her boring to look at, if that makes sense. I don't know how you feel, Bowlestrek.
Daisy Ridley is the worst actor to ever appear in Star Wars. Hayden Christensen, I have to give him some credit because he had awful material to work with, but watch the scenes where there's no dialogue, especially in Revenge of the Sith, when visually with emoting without actually uttering a word, he actually does pull off the darkness that was going to become Darth Vader. So if you take out the dialogue and just watch some of those scenes, you can see that he is a good actor, and he's done well in some of the other things I've seen him in. It wasn't up to him. He was given god awful dialogue to work with, and George Lucas loved the man, but he shouldn't be directing. He's better off with concepts, not directing people and not writing dialogue. Daisy Ridley, there is like Hayden Christensen had a lot of nuance. Daisy Ridley has none of that. It's like Brie Larson or like the 13th Doctor. It's just a blank vessel. She's just there. She has no commanding screen presence whatsoever. And I know some people might disagree with me, but I think Hayden gets somewhat of a bad rap because I don't think it was bad as we've made it out to be. It wasn't his fault. It was the dialogue, but the scenes where he's not speaking, just look at the way he's acting with his eyes. It's actually, some of those scenes are, especially in the Revenge of the Sith, are completely chilling. So he can act. Daisy Ridley, I don't know how she got this job. I don't know why she's still there. But she's about as exciting as my flavorless, sparkling death water.
I'm inclined to agree. I think Hayden Christensen got a lot of flack, obviously, in the fallout from the prequels. I mean, this obviously happened in a time before social media really took off, so maybe he was spared some of the worst of it. But I feel bad for the guy because it's just a classic example of probably doing the best with what you've got, which isn't much, unfortunately. Alec Guinness carried A New Hope until Harrison Ford rescued the film from boredom. Interesting look at it. Alec Guinness is definitely a guy with... he brought a lot of gravitas, I guess, to it, and a bit of authenticity. No, that's not the word I'm looking for. He brought a lot of dignity, I suppose, to the part. It could have come across as really farcical, but he did well with it. So I'll give him that. Here's one for you, Bowlestrek. Actually, if PM Justine loses in November, I'll fly back to Ontario and I'll buy you all the celebration drinks, drinker. What are your thoughts on the John Wick series? I don't know. Right, so is this a question for both of us? I'll give my thoughts, and then Bowlestrek, if you want to jump in with yours. I absolutely love the John Wick series. All three movies are great. That is a brilliant example of how you can do a lot with quite little. They don't use a lot of CGI. They don't use a lot of stunt work. Keanu Reeves does most of the stunts himself. They shoot in long, continuous takes that are just beautiful to watch. I love those films, and they're growing in popularity all the time because people recognize the amount of work that goes into them. So I can't say enough good things about them, and I'd love to do a drunken review of them.
No, I tend to agree. And actually, Keanu Reeves is in Hollywood kind of a interesting character because this is someone who every 5 to 10 years just completely explodes onto the mainstream stage. Where you had Bill and Ted, then he went away. Then you had Speed, he blew up again. Then he went away for a little bit. Then you had The Matrix, which the first one was good. The other two were crap, but he blew up again. Then he went away. Now we have John Wick. I actually, and I also love the premise because if any of my long-term subs happen to be following, you'll know that I'm kind of a dog person. So a whole movie based around getting revenge for killing a dog is something that I, needless to say, agree with. And actually, it probably says that I'm weak-willed, but I actually can't watch that one scene. But the movie itself is brilliant. Some of the best fight scenes we've ever seen. Keanu Reeves. Some people might disagree with me on this, but I think he's probably one of the best actors of the past few decades. I haven't seen John Wick 3 yet, but I've seen the first two. Brilliant movies, and it does give us hope, where most of what Hollywood is, 90% of what Hollywood puts out now is complete crap. But we still have movies like John Wick, so every now and then, a decent franchise and a decent movie will sneak through. But aside from that one scene involving the dog that I can't watch because I'm a wuss when it comes to that. Honestly, guys, I watched Old Yeller when I was a kid, and it took me forever to get over it. I think Marley and Me traumatized me for a month, so that's my weakness when it comes to movies. But yeah, absolutely brilliant movie, and I will never watch A Dog's Life.
I refuse to watch Marley and Me for that reason. I don't know if you remember from The Fly 2, there's a scene where he's got a dog in that, which is used as like a testing, like a lab rat basically for the sort of teleporter, and it goes horribly wrong, and he ends up, the main character has to put it down. That was a horrible scene to watch,
No,
and it just
thing
seems
with,
so cruel to do that to an animal. I
with
think
I Am Legend, I can never watch that again either. I don't even like looking at it on my shelf. So so if you want to know what my Achilles heel is, and I'm sure people would love to find out. But yes, I cannot, and I'm not an SJW obviously, but yeah, anything involving any bad thing happening to an animal in a movie, I can't watch. And I don't go on about it. I think this is maybe like the third time I brought it up in 12 years of doing YouTube. But yeah, that's just the one thing that just I can't deal with. It's yeah. And Noel, send a shout out to Lexi. Yeah, Lexi's my husky. She's hanging out on the side here.
I'm just looking at some of these other super chats here. I don't want my pain taken away. I need my pain. Nice little quote there from The Final Frontier. And actually, those are the scenes from that movie that I really appreciate. Shatner was a stage actor before he got into Star Trek and everything, and those scenes where they go back through the various characters' personal experiences, their personal lives, like McCoy having to put his father out of his misery and Spock seeing himself be born.
Yep.
Actually, really good scenes and really good acting. And this is, I guess, one of the things I've always said about Shatner. Like, when he's properly managed, he's actually capable of giving a pretty damn good performance. Like, he obviously hams it up sometimes, and he does his big dramatic pauses at times, but he's a good actor when he's properly controlled. And that's one of the reasons I actually really respect the original trilogy, or sorry, the original series movies.
Well, I think William Shatner has always gotten an undeserved reputation for being a bad actor. He actually isn't. Look at Star Trek, the original series. Yeah, he has a specific way of speaking, but he commanded authority. He commanded respect. But if you look at some of the other things he's done, I don't know if any of you remember Rescue 911, a show that was William Shatner hosted it. It was late 80s, early 90s. And honestly, the premise of the show was it was based on real life 911 calls, and a lot of this was absolutely horrific to watch. Like, don't watch it while you're eating. But the way he narrated, he was narrating it as the voice of doom. So completely different from what he did on Star Trek. And even if you look at something like Boston Legal, again, completely different character from Captain Kirk, T.J. Hooker. His brief appearance on Shit My Dad Says, which I think was 9 years ago, again, completely different character. So I've always thought that William Shatner's accusations of being a bad actor is unwarranted. The guy is actually a good actor, and you're right, it depends on who's directing. And if Shatner is directing Shatner, aside from a few scenes, we end up with Star Trek V.
Peak Shatner. We've got another one here. I'm probably going to make this the last super chat because I originally imagined this just running for an hour or so, and we're now at 2 hours, so I may wrap it up fairly soon. But the last super chat I'm going to do here is curious what you guys think of V for Vendetta. Did it foreshadow the current era of woke PC? Oh, it's so... yeah, it's so close to that. I actually see the era that we live in as being more like Demolition Man, where you can get fined for violating the verbal morality statute and saying things that are inappropriate. I generally, as a film, I love V for Vendetta. I thought it was very stylistically well done, good performances. The dialogue, it has some scenes that are so well shot, like the dialogue intercut with events that are going on. You can't help but just be taken in by it, I guess. I know the writers have a tendency to get quite verbose at times and go over the top with it, but this is an example of where it works really well. So I really enjoyed V for Vendetta.
Yeah, I have to rewatch it myself, but yeah, I did enjoy it. I think if we're looking at two movies, well, both based on books, that mirrors what we're going through right now would be 1984 and Fahrenheit 451. I think possibly more so Fahrenheit 451. That is what we are living now.
I was just looking through a couple of these other comments here. Shatner wrote a novel where his dead corpse was reanimated with Borg nanobots and rose up against the TNG crew. I think I've heard of that one. It's called Avenger.
Actually, there's literally a whole series of these. Shatner, there must be 10 books in this series. Yeah, they made them into audiobooks, which Shatner narrated himself. And I actually have them. I have them on cassette, but I've ripped them to digital. Yeah, it's over the top. It's Shatner at his most Shatnerific. Yeah, those books and the audiobooks are not his finest hour. I will agree. It is worth a listen, but yeah, it's like I said, Shatner. He's a great actor, but he can be hit or miss. And those, literally, there's like 10 of them in the series. Those were a miss.
Yeah. Cool. Well, guys, I think I'm probably going to wrap this up fairly soon. Like I say, it's gone longer than I expected, but honestly, it's just been such fun talking with everyone, and especially having you on Bowlestrek. I really appreciate you appearing on this. And it's been great to talk to you. I guess one of the questions I would ask for everyone watching is, what are you kind of working on next? What have you got coming up?
For myself, Well, I'm planning on
Yeah.
doing a soft relaunch of my channel in August. I'm doing a complete equipment overhaul because if you look at my videos, they're a little bit clunky because I've been using this god awful open source Windows editing program for the past few years. So I'm actually, as part of the new rig, I'm switching to Final Cut Pro, and the presentation, like the voiceover, the style is going to be the same, but I'm looking to give my channel a professional look. I may update the logo, but the biggest change is, even though I've been talking about it for well over a year, I am going to start doing regular live streams, 1 to 2 a week. I'm going to have regular guests. I know Gary from Nerdrotic is going to be some of the first. Noel from the TARDIS Zone, who I talked with this morning, he's in the chat. Tharis, several others. Critical Drinker, I would love to have you on as a regular as well, because I actually, technical issues aside, I've actually really enjoyed this chat.
Be happy to do it.
And at some point, yeah, we'll both drink so we can do an actual drunken happy hour or unhappy hour podcast.
Yeah, no, that sounds good, man. And yeah, that's pretty much it from the drinker and from Bowlestrek tonight. I guess I have to sign off like I do with my videos, and that's all I have for today. Go away now.